Hello, my friends. Today we are starting with the situation around the negotiations. All the media are shouting that Ukraine has agreed to limit the size of its army to 800,000 soldiers. The latest peace plan is less favorable for Moscow, leaving the most sensitive issues to be decided by Trump and Zelensky, among them territorial questions and US security guarantees. But everyone seems to forget about things that are just as important, the territories and the security guarantees, and these issues still haven't been resolved. Zelensky wants to meet with Trump to discuss some points in person and find a solution.
Today we also worked with the Ukrainian negotiating team on the document drafted with the United States in Geneva. The principles in this document can be developed into deeper agreements. And that's in our shared interest to make security real. I'm counting on continued active cooperation with the American side and with President Trump. A lot depends on America, because it's American strength that Russia takes into account the most. I thank everyone here in Ukraine. I thank everyone who is helping.
And Trump said that he's already looking forward to meeting with Zelensky, and afterward there will be a meeting with Putin. I look forward to the opportunity to meet with President Zelensky and President Putin soon, but only when the agreement to end this war is finalized or in its final stages. Thank you for your attention to this very important issue, and let's all hope peace can be achieved as soon as possible. And Yermak said that the meeting will take place in the coming days. Zelensky is ready to meet with Trump in 2 days to finalize the peace deal. Yermak said Zelensky wants to meet with Trump as soon as possible, possibly on Thanksgiving Day, November 27. The peace plan has been significantly revised. Compared to the original US proposal with 28 points, it now reflects Ukraine's interests and respects our red lines. The issue of territorial concessions will be discussed personally with Trump. This is the main problem because the US believes Ukraine losing territory is only a matter of time. Ukraine will not give up its future path toward NATO. And here is it's obvious if Zelensky manages to convince Trump to modify the deal so that the war stops along the current front line, which of course is what all of us would want, then Putin will never agree to those terms, and that means the war could continue. But I think everyone still remembers Zelensky's statement that he would do everything possible to prevent anyone from saying that Ukraine refused the US proposal, and that he would make sure it's Russia, not Ukraine, that has to decide whether this war stops. Foreign analysts have also noticed this strategy from Zelensky.
Well, I think that President Zelensky understood very well how high the stakes are. And that's why he did not rule out the Trump plan. He did not say no. And he said, I'm willing to negotiate based on this US peace plan. And I think he's going to continue to do that. And I think what he's going to do, or is going, in my assessment, is going to be very similar to a sentence that a former Israeli Prime Minister Levi Eshkol said in the 1960s, when he said, I'm compromising and compromising and compromising until I get what I want. And I think this is what President Zelensky is trying to do right now. Just another word about the security guarantee. As far as I know, and I saw the initial draft security guarantee that the US gave Ukraine, I think this is the most significant security guarantee that President Trump agreed to give any country, especially Ukraine. And this was the baseline for the negotiations. Since then, the security guarantee got stronger. And it is modeled, it's not an Article 5 guarantee, that's for sure, but it is pretty close to an Article 5 guarantee and this is significant.
Overall, the political battle continues. Meanwhile, it was reported that Vitkov advised the Kremlin on how to steer Trump toward Russia's position. According to Bloomberg, Steve Vitkov advised the Kremlin on what to tell Trump about peace. In a phone conversation on October 14, Vitkov gave Russian advisor Ushakov several specific recommendations. How should Putin be prepared for a conversation with Trump? Vitkov suggested creating for Ukraine an analog of the 20-point plan the US used for the Gaza agreement. During the call, he recommended that Putin congratulate Trump on the Gaza peace deal and emphasize Russia's support for this initiative, and he advised portraying Trump as a man of peace to set a positive tone for further discussions. Vitkov stressed that the call should take place before Trump's meeting with Zelensky in order to influence the US position in advance and gently introduce the idea that Russia is supposedly open to a new peace plan. In the end, Ushakov agreed that this scenario looked promising and accepted Vitkov's advice ahead of the upcoming call. How true this information is remains unknown. It was reportedly obtained from a recording of their conversation, but there has been no official confirmation. But unfortunately, the fighting on the front hasn't stopped either, and every day we're losing some territory. So let's move on to the Kostiantynivka direction. Yesterday, it was confirmed that the Russians captured Ivanopilya and managed to advance about 3 kilometers, 800 meters. Because of that, the situation here is getting somewhat worse. And why do I say somewhat? Because even Russian sources have started admitting that Ukrainian forces are inflicting heavy losses on them there, and holding their positions is extremely difficult. As we can see, they're trying to move forward in small groups and sometimes even have local successes, but overall they are not able to make real progress toward Kostiantynivka, so the fighting continues. In the Dobropilya direction, the Russians continue assaulting Sofiyivka, Shakhove, and Nove Shakhove. And today, new information appeared indicating that the Russians are trying to push further, and the gray zone is expanding. Overall, they keep trying, but so far, the Ukrainian forces aren't letting them consolidate anything and are actively destroying them. In the Pokrovsk direction, the situation is opposite. The Ukrainian forces have made significant gains. And they managed to carry out successful counterattacks and push the Russians back. For now, all information about the new attacks is classified, so we'll have to wait and see how events develop. But Russian attacks are continuing as well in the town of Rodinske. They are storming Myrnograd and trying to break through on the western flank of Pokrovsk. Ukrainian soldiers also showed how they captured Russian troops in Myrnograd. Ukrainian fighters captured 4 Russians in the northern part of Myrnograd. The situation in the town is still being clarified, but the Russians likely achieved some local gains. As we can see, unfortunately, the Russians are still trying to move forward in the city, and the gray zone is expanding. Analysts also explained again today why everyone is fighting so fiercely for Donetsk Oblast. And the reason is simple. It's the most valuable region in Ukraine. Why is Putin obsessed with the Donbas and so eager to capture Donetsk region? The Kremlin has been trying to seize the Donbas by force for more than 11 years. The Donbas includes the territories of two regions, Luhansk and Donetsk. So why is it so important? Historically, the Donbas provided a significant share of Ukraine's coal production, making it the country's energy base. It hosted numerous power plants, steel mills, coke chemical plants, and machine building factories. The port of Mariupol was one of the largest export hubs for metal and agricultural products, and access to the Sea of Azov made the region crucial for international trade. Whoever controls Donetsk region controls important transportation routes, including the corridor between central Ukraine, the Don River, and the Caucasus, as well as key logistics routes. It also means control over industrial centers, access to the Azov coastline, together with the Zaporizhia region, and enormous mineral reserves. The Russians, in particular, are fighting so aggressively for the Pokrovsk district because of its mineral deposits. In the village of Shevchenko are the largest lithium reserves in Europe, and in Kotlane, the biggest deposit of coke and coal among European countries. Control of the Donbas also provides a staging ground for pushing deeper into Ukraine. The region contains fortifications and routes ideal for launching offensives into neighboring areas. On top of that, for Putin, the Donbas is part of his narrative about protecting Russians. Giving it up would mean a political defeat the Kremlin will never accept. But as we know, people were always told that the Donbas wasn't needed by anyone and that it was a subsidized region. But as always, the public was lied to, while trillions of dollars were made. And now Putin wants to do the same. Now, let's move on to the Novopavlivka direction. Here, the Russians are pushing through the fields toward Filia, assaulting Dachne, and advancing toward Zelenskyy. But so far, there haven't been any new changes on this part of the front. However, in the direction of the village of Pokrovsk in Dnipropetrovsk region, there are more losses. The Russians advanced toward the village of Kolomytsy and across the fields near Oleksiivka. Because of this, the front continues to shift north in our favor, and the Russians are also continuing the attacks in the areas of Novoselivka, Sosnivka, and Yegorivka in the Gulay-Pole direction. The situation is extremely difficult. The Russians managed to advance in several directions at once, widen the flank, and push directly toward the city. Because of this, the fighting for Gulay-Pole has essentially already begun. At the same time, the Russians are assaulting the villages of Praluki, Varvarivka, Zelenskyy, and the outskirts of Gulay-Pole. In the Zaporizhia direction, the Russians also managed to make a small advance in Primorsk, and the fighting there continues. They are trying to bypass Stepnohirsk and capture it later, so the situation here is also difficult. The Russians are moving forward gradually, though not in any major breakthrough. In the Kherson direction, the Russians are trying to break through in the area of the Antonievsky Bridge and are shelling the right bank, but there have been no new changes over the past 24 hours. Now let's move to the Siversk direction. Here, the Russians are assaulting Yampil, Zakitne, Dronivka, Siversk, and Zvanivka. The gray zone in Siversk is, of course, expanding. The Russians are already advancing through parts of the city. Although there are no major changes yet, Ukrainian forces continue to destroy them there. In the Liman direction, the Russians are assaulting Zarechne, Stavky, and Novoselivka and pushing past Shandrigolove. However, the loss of Novoselivka and the village of Stavky hasn't been confirmed, so the fighting continues. At the same time, the Russians keep claiming they're entering the outskirts of Liman, but there is no official confirmation yet, so we're waiting. In the Borova direction, the Russians are pushing past Raigorodka, but they aren't achieving any real success there either, and the front line remains stable. In the Kupiansk direction, the Russians are assaulting Petropavlivka and pushing past Peshane. However, they have no success, and the front line remains unchanged. In the Veliki Burluk direction, the Russians are once again trying to break through to the village of Kolodezne, but they're not achieving anything, and the front line hasn't changed over the past day. In Vovchansk, the fighting continues, with attacks recorded near the village of Sinelnikove, although the Russians had previously made significant advances there. There have been no changes for several days, and the Ukrainian forces have managed to stabilize the situation. In the Sumy direction, the Russians are pushing toward Oleksiivka and Yunakivka, but they haven't achieved any success. Meanwhile, not everyone agrees with the peace deal and wants Trump to put Russia in its place rather than negotiate with them. An American historian and author explained what the consequences could be. If Ukraine accepts terms equivalent to capitulation, the rest of the world will understand that the only way to prevent future invasions by Russia, China, or any other nuclear power is to possess nuclear weapons. The consequences for the international order, which is based on the principle of inviolable national borders, would be severe. Rewarding Russia for its attack on Ukraine would normalize invasions and armed conflicts. It would undermine peace and stability in the region. Ukraine's capitulation would push Putin, by all means, legal, moral, psychological, and economic, to continue waging war in Europe. There would be no reliable mechanism to enforce compliance. Since Russia has violated all agreements with Ukraine, new Kremlin promises are meaningless. American security guarantees would seem useless, and the only effective safeguard, Ukraine's NATO membership, is explicitly prohibited by the plan. The plan doesn't ensure Ukraine's sovereignty, the ability to defend itself, join alliances, or rebuild. Trump is placing Russia's imperial ambitions above the democratic will of the Ukrainian people. The plan was created without Ukraine's participation and appears to have been dictated by the Russians. This means Ukrainians may have no choice but to continue fighting. Trump's desire for a Nobel Peace Prize led to a reckless attempt at a peace settlement. If his plan takes effect, it will only lead to a new conflict. Friends. Of course, he's right, but Europe and the US cannot provide enough, strong enough military support for Ukraine to achieve victory by force. Currently, everything is moving toward a negotiated agreement. But, friends, be sure to share your thoughts in the comments. And that's all from me. So please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all the latest news. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye bye.